Hello, everyone. Paulie here. It's good to have you here. Been a little while since we've had one of these meditation instructionals with a guided meditation, and there's a very good reason for this. And also, the reason why the focus for today is going to be on grief. And as you may have seen from the title, we're calling this Holding Space for Grief because we believe that as we recently have experienced in my own life, I've recently experienced the passing of a dear friend, and it's the first time it happened for me uh, that a peer has passed. So it's been a very interesting and difficult experience, and we've learned a lot from it. And we learned that we were inspired by the phrase holding space for grief, because quite often we are faced when any of us is faced with the loss of a loved one, and it doesn't just have to be through death. This could be the simply the loss of contact or the loss of a loved one in our life, something or someone who is no longer in our life. It can be a pet. Grief affects us in many different ways. But it can be very difficult to find peace, especially when alone. And a lot of people, when they're dealing with grief alone, they will turn to prayer. Prayer is also something that can be done communally. Um, and that works very good for a lot of people, especially when they want to communicate with a particular deity, of course. But with meditation, one can achieve the same kind of peace. It is just good to have this practice if you were to ever find yourself in a situation where you needed to find calm and peace with your grief, but perhaps you're alone or you're in a place where there's no one that you know around you. So having a practice like this can be very useful if you find yourself needing to deal with grief, because grief can be overwhelming suddenly at times. It can find any of us in situations just suddenly out of the blue, we get overwhelmed with emotions and it can interrupt what you're doing. So being able to tell people, I need a moment and collect yourself quickly, of course, is a very normal practice for many people to do. And if you get a few extra minutes, having a meditative practice for having space for your grief, I'll talk about that in just a second. Having space for your grief can help you to process that in a healing way. So remember, and this doesn't just have to do with death. This is any kind of loss of a loved one. So for if you meditate, when you meditate, for whatever reason you might meditate, if it's you do it just to get in touch with yourself, if you actually meditate to get in touch with your God or a greater spirit, or you just simply want to have peace of mind, for any reason, holding space for grief, your meditation practice can work just as well. You don't have to modify exactly the way you meditate on a normal basis to hold space for your grief. Now, the reason why we say it's holding space for and not just healing grief, it is healing grief when you do something like this. But the reason why we say you're holding space is because in our mind, you are giving the memories of your loved one, and knowing that these memories are made of love, especially at the time of when someone has passed, when someone has died, or something has died, because you have this void. And that is a very real space. It may just be an emotional space for you. You may have a picture of it in your mind, however it is that you process this, but it is very real. And so the memories of your loved one fill this void, and they fill it with love. Other emotions can come up too. It doesn't just have to be a beautiful, golden, shining space of love for your loved one. And we'll get to that in a minute from our own personal story. But know that the memories that you have of that loved one are filling that space. They're filling that void. And so you're giving this space so that you and these memories that you have, which are from you and of the one who's gone on or who is no longer in your life. And knowing that the love that is there is healing and helping you. And depending on your belief structure, you may believe that you are actually in communication with your loved one. And that's beautiful. And that is also where the healing happens. Now, our own personal story with grief from recently, our friend who passed, who we were close with at certain times in our life, not very recently, but we had shared some very special times together. And we had bonds in other ways. And when she had passed, it was for us a time to hold space with just the love that we had for her, but we found ourselves in a conversation with her, not like we truly believed she was necessarily really there, although I suppose that is possible. But we were able to process some of our anger that we had had with her that was unresolved. And we were able to process the grief. We were able to process anger at ourselves, for not spending more time with her. It was one thing. So by holding this space, we were able to go over times we hadn't had together, dreams, thoughts, wishes, process oh, should have done this, and, let ourselves we actually let ourselves beat myself up a little bit. I beat myself up a little bit, but then apologized and moved on. And it was like processing that by holding the space was different than being in community with other people where I could tell stories, have them listen to, we could share stories about her and everything like that. And as we'll get to in a minute here with cultures around the world, there's a lot of community in grief, which again is why we say a meditative practice can help. Just in case you're in a situation somewhere and you get overcome with grief or emotion or memory, and there may not be an easy place or people around you to share your emotions with. So you kind of got to heal yourself and move on from that moment. And also being able to do this, meditating to the inner self and holding your space with grief will allow you then to be able to process your grief in a healthy way so you can communicate it better to the people who you love in your life or to whoever you'd like to talk about with it later. So let's talk about different grief practices around the world, just very briefly, some of the similarities and differences. In Buddhist practices, meditations are focused on the impermanence of life. There's chanting and offerings to guide the deceased consciousness towards rebirth. In the Jewish traditions, the Shiva period of 7 days of intense mourning with prayer, scripture readings, and reflections of the deceased's virtues. Muslim practices, there's reciting of Quranic verses, focusing on patience and acceptance of Allah's will, and communal prayers during the mourning period. I like that too, because there are a lot of similarities in many cultures of just that kind of patience and acceptance. In the Catholic tradition, praying rosaries, attending masses, and lighting candles is a way to seek comfort and intercession for the deceased. Native American cultures, rituals incorporating nature elements, drumming, and community feasts to honor the deceased spirit. So note that with many of the differences that there are, and there are many significant differences for grief in death and grief in other things, loss of other things, depending on the philosophy, depending on the religion, depending on the culture where it's practiced. But many of them focus on the community and doing it with friends. And that is, we cannot stress enough how important it was to be able to grieve for our friend with other friends, how healing that was for us and for other people in ways totally unexpected. It was beautiful. And yet being able to have that space for oneself, if you need it, if you want to take it, it's better than just being alone with your grief. Crying is always good. And during times like this, crying, it will come up, and that can be very releasing, and that can be very cleansing and healing also. But if you must do it alone, it is also good to be able to center oneself and have a healthy space for this grief and be able to just let it flow. So let's do a guided meditation. I'll start a little bit of background music here, just a tone. Turn that down a little bit. And let's get in a space together where we are physically comfortable, and I will take us through a meditation on grief. It's something you can practice now. It's something you can just practice when it is that you are grieving. But again, your own regular meditation practice is a wonderful way to start, and then just to add things to that, or just change the focus a little bit to however it is that you are most comfortable grieving also. So this will probably go about a half an hour, 20 minutes to a half an hour on this. And we hope that this helps now or in the future, whenever it is that you need it. So first of all, let's get physically comfortable. Drop into presence here for yourself. Get your body comfy, whether you're standing, sitting, or laying down, wherever you are. Just kind of let your body settle. Get in touch with where it is you are touching the chair or couch, mat, where you're touching the ground. We'll start by grounding and getting comfortable in the physical space where we are at. Each one of us doing this all together. And remember, the goal of this, holding this space for grief, is to find peace. Not without the grief, but with it. So as you slowly settle into your comfortable physical position, you may notice your eyes close or your gaze just soften, just so that as you feel your body settle and relax into your physical space, the mind also relaxes. So just let your gaze drift. And what you're listening to, let sounds come and go, including my voice. Just settling the body. And let's start relaxing from the brows of our heads. So right at the brow of your head, allow that to relax, moving to your eyes, your cheekbones, your ears, down the back of your head, just slowly being conscious of how the body is relaxing. Down the throat, make sure that you relax the jaw. Let your jaw calm, stretch it if you need to now. And down the shoulders, you may need to shrug them or adjust. Let your arms just hang as comfortably relaxed as possible. And let the relaxation move down your arms. It's moving down your arms, relaxing all the way to the hands and out the fingers as it moves down your back, down your chest, down your belly. It's moving down your back. Your body is completely relaxing. Down your hips, past your waist, relaxing the legs and knees. All the way down and out the feet and the toes until you become physically relaxed. Your mind may still be active, paying attention to the body. And that's fine. We want to be aware of what the body has to tell us, what our bodies have to tell us. Be aware as we focus very slowly on an idea of grief. When you hear the word grief, relax your mind, because images and emotions may form there and seem to coalesce there. And yet it's your entire being that is feeling these with grief, whatever it is that we feel. And so create a space for yourself with your grief. However you're sitting or laying down or standing. Imagine your grief is out in front of you. It's out in front of you in this space. It may appear as a golden ball. It may appear as a picture. You may even feel like you can reach out and touch it, and that's good. Because your grief is real. And you know you want peace with it. Don't need to delete it. No need to throw it away. And as emotions come up, like if sadness comes up, or anger, or guilt, sitting here with the grief, know those feelings and emotions all come from the love that you still have for the loved one that you are missing. Know that the space there where there is the grief, it used to be empty. And that is truly what was causing you sadness or anger or guilt, anything that may have been there with the grief. That was from the void, missing your loved one. Instead, now you have these memories of them. That is where the grief comes from. The memories of the loved one. Those memories may be full of different emotions also, but the memories are real. The memories are what make the guilt worth experiencing, because that is part of the love. Knowing that remembering your loved one in any way that you do honors them and honors you. If you believe they can hear you now, know you are balancing what was with what is. You are honoring their memory, and in doing so, honoring also yourself, for the memories are from you with them. And you are carrying on your loved one by holding this space for your grief. Holding this space in front of you, wherever you feel it, but knowing that it is real and it is good and healthy to feel this. If you need to take a break, if you need any kind of release, that is also part of your grief and honoring the memory of your loved one. Honoring your loved one. Know that the more you experience this grief, the more peace that will come from it. Know that not running from the grief, creating this safe space for your grief here, because you need it. Perhaps there's no one else around to share your grief with. Perhaps remembering your loved one like this brings you joy. As you remember in this space for your grief, don't forget to breathe very deeply. Just as in the cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth, cycle your breathing in through the nose and out the mouth, or vice versa. Giving honor to your loved one. Know that there is joy in finding peace in the grief in this space. It's all right if the grief is difficult outside of this space. Know you have this space always to come to. It's all right if no one else understands your grief like you do. Here you can learn to communicate your grief to others. Feelings and emotions, don't run away from them. Let them flow as they will. It is not permanent, just as life is not permanent for any one of us. From this life we move on, from each other's lives. Things change, and know your loved one has just simply gone on to another form of existence. It doesn't matter what your beliefs specifics are. Just know that it happens. And that any sadness you feel, know that any guilt you feel, or any other negative emotions will pass. Because holding this space for your grief brings peace. Know this is true. You may need to adjust how you're seated or standing, laying down. Remember that you're grounded there. Somewhere below you is the earth, protecting you, nurturing you, source of life. Renewing and rejuvenating, healing your grief will rejuvenate you and honor your loved one. wherever you find yourself, wherever you find yourself. You never know when grief may overcome or bring emotions up. We don't know when we may need to be prepared for holding a space for our grief. Having this space prepared for ourselves here, a safe space, also allows us to invite others in later. We know that grief can be healthy. It may not be fun or something we want to experience very often, but it's real and we can grow from it. Know that this is true. Know that holding this space for your grief is healthy and healing. Having your grief out in front of you, imagine that it transforms and transmutes into a different picture. A silver ball. A picture of you and your loved one, or your loved one, a picture they took. Or simply a memory, a color of emotion, a feeling. Let it flow. Don't forget to breathe. And now in this meditation, where we're having this space, you have this space for your grief, your memories, your love. Just imagine that you can reach out and protect that, bring it inside of you, hold it in your heart space. And then just slowly let your hands and body relax until you can breathe deeply and come back fully to the body. Feel the body lighten a little bit. Feel the mind come back to ease and awareness of your environment, your physical surroundings. Move and shake off how you need to. Remember what you did here. Remember what you learned and what emotions came up. Practice this as often as you can and need to. And we hope that it does help when you can find a community with others to help with your grieving also. So peace, love, blessings of the Grove.